Let's get right into it because we have Gerald Celente on the line with us here on the Wall Street Shuffle. If you'd like to join us, 877-326-3255. Gerald has been a regular guest on our show, and he's been on for a number of years with us. He was on during a Tea Party with us. He is. I get such a kick out of talking to Gerald because, well, number one, CNN even uses him as he's their go-to guy as far as looking into the future. And I like your predictions because you're the only guy more negative than me, and your stuff is right on the money, Gerald. Good to have you on board.
Well, thanks for having me.
All right, let me tell everybody where they can get you. Trendsjournal.com, trendsjournal.com, correct?
That's right, and we're coming out within just a couple of days of our top trends for 2011. We released them before the new year, but now they're coming out in full detail, and there are some big breakthroughs we're looking at in a number of fields beyond just finance.
Well, how about people love having you on. If they can get a little bit of a little peek into what your forecast for 2011 is before it kind of officially gets out there, it's going to give them a warm fuzzy. So give them something that they're not hearing on the mainstream media right now.
Well, one of the things they're not hearing on the mainstream media is that there's no recovery. It's just a cover-up. And we know now, because of the Dodd-Frank bill, for example, Dan, that the Federal Reserve funneled some $20 trillion with a T worth of deals. $3 trillion, they put the number out, but $20 trillion worth of deals have happened in loans at no interest or low interest, loans that were made to banks, brokerage firms, hedge funds, and private businesses throughout the world. Bank of Japan, South Korea, Spain, France, Portugal, Ireland, Canada, GE, you name it, Harley-Davidson. So this thing is breaking apart. And then you take a look to Europe. The central banks out there they're like our Federal Reserve. They're buying up any debt out there to keep this thing going up, and it's become so ludicrous, so out of sight, that now the Japanese and the Chinese are stepping in to boost up Portugal, Spain, Ireland, Greece. I mean, come on, and Belgium. So, no, this thing is by no means over. The worst is yet to come.
What forecast for 2010 that you made in 2009? You've been on with us since probably 2007 or 2008. For 2010, what forecast did you take the most grief over, yet you were right on the money with?
Oh, the one we call the crash of 2010. You know, people say, well, first of all, we made it very clear in the Trends Journal we were not talking about a stock market crash. We were talking about a world financial crisis of some sort. And it's happened in Europe, but they keep changing, and in the U.S., but they keep changing the game. They come up with these schemes undreamed of to keep the Ponzi scheme going, like the one I just mentioned with the Fed, and then you look at what they've done in Europe. Oh, they were never going to bail out a failing country according to the Maastricht Agreement and the Lisbon Treaty, except when we do it. Then we're going to change the game. Oh, and by the way, Trichet, that arrogant Frenchman over there, head of the European Central Bank, a day before he pledges they're not going to buy up bad bonds, what do they do the next day? They buy them up. You or I can never get away with this stuff, but this is the greatest bank robbery in world history, and the banks are doing the robbing.
Well, the banks and central banks of the world are bailing out their customers, which are other banks. They're not in the mood to bail out private individuals.
Oh, no.
And they could care less if they destroy the dollar, the euro, the yen, the yuan. They could care less what they destroy along the way because they really can continue to print, and all it's going to do is to increase inflation, debase the currency, and that's the scenario I see. I don't think it's any more complicated than that.
It's what you see, what I see. It's what the finance minister of Brazil is screaming. Manteiga, a currency war has begun.
Now, that's a gutsy call when you've got a little bitty country, even though it's a powerful country like Brazil, looking up at China and the U.S. and saying, both you guys are currency manipulators. I hate you both. We're going to have a trade war. Well, that's a gutsy call from a little country like that.
That's right, and you're hearing it and you're seeing it because they're all fighting to salvage their currencies from escalating with all of this hot money running in Chile, and all of South America with the exception of Mexico. I mean, Mexico is ready to blow apart any minute. And look what's going on around the world. Current events form future trends. One of the trends that we wrote about, again, before this happened, was students of the world unite. Look what's going on in Tunisia. Who's taken to the streets?
Oh, yeah.
The students. Off with their heads, they were screaming at the royal couple a month ago in the UK as they raised the tuition rates 200%. Austerity measures? Here's an austerity measure for you. We're going to lower the minimum wage. We're going to cut the services, and we're going to increase everything that you get from us is going to cost you more. Oh, and by the way, we're not going to get you a job. You're not going to have any. But in the meantime, we're going to put a value-added tax on everything else, increase taxes, so that the white shoe boys don't have to get, quote, a haircut. Even to come out with that language, a haircut, shows you the arrogance of who these people are. They're money junkies. I want to make that really clear. Just like somebody's hooked on heroin and they can't get off, you have guys like the Steven Schwartzman from Blackstone Group that when they were going to raise the tax rate on hedge funds, he said, quote, it's the equivalent of Hitler invading Poland in 1939. Here's a guy that's worth over $5 billion, and he can't take any loss on his dough. You have money junkies that are bringing down the global economy.
Yeah, and I think that's the entire story of 2011. You're better than I am at picking time. What I've said is you're going to see massive inflation begin to rear its ugly head in the second quarter of this year, where people really, really, really notice it. I've been on that for almost a year and a half. The end of this year, I don't know, but I do know that you can't keep these balls in the air. You can't keep feeding more bad paper and papering up old bad paper with new bad paper. You can do it for a while until some event, and maybe you're better at that than I am, either a black swan or some event that you can foresee is going to make people step back and go, kind of like a 9/11 type event. I'm not suggesting that a terrorist attack is it, but I'm saying something will make the world just pause for a second, and they'll go, oh, maybe this isn't real.
You got it, and I agree with you 100%. And again, just like you're saying it, what I was saying, but here's what they do. They lie when they don't manipulate. Look what they've done to the COLA increases.
Oh, yeah.
And people are getting nothing. They got a decline. They're saying that inflation isn't going up, just like they lower the job numbers when people fall off the unemployment rolls.
Yep.
This is Soviet Union and the good old USSA. That's the only people who get away with this. Oh, Dan, food and fuel don't count. Those aren't inflationary figures. And you know why? Because I'm a Princeton guy, and I say so. Remember my line. You want to know what's wrong with America? 6 simple words. Harvard, Princeton, Yale, bullets, bombs, and banks.
Yep.
And we talked about the banks. Let's talk about the bullets and bombs. They're losers. The military is merely another branch of the losers in the rest of the federal government. They're losing in Afghanistan 10 years. They're showing of all of this waste of money in the Pentagon with these planes that can't fly and don't do things that they promise to do. And they're draining our treasury at a time when we need this money here the most. You know, people ask me, and I'm a political atheist. I don't believe in fairy tales or political parties and those kind of political religions. The only person I would vote for and speak up for is Ron Paul, for 2 reasons. Number one, his stand on the Federal Reserve, that criminal operation that's taken over the banking system of the country. And the other one is he wants to close all the bases overseas and end these wars. And I am in total agreement with them. These are immoral wars. They told us we were in Iraq because Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction and ties to Al-Qaeda. He doesn't. Hey, Dan, have you seen Osama bin Laden lately? Maybe they'll find him in the next groping in the TSA.
You know what I love about you, Gerald? You have a hard time opening up and really sharing your emotions. If you keep this stuff bottled up inside you, my friend, it's going to turn on you one day. You've got to learn to emote, my friend. Get it off your chest.
Well, you know, that's part of being Italian. Passione.
I'll tell you, the thing that is getting me, and I did it in the opening segment of the show, and let me try this on you for size, what is driving me nuts is we already have massive food inflation working the way through the United States. We have Tunisia, we have Morocco that have turned into fireballs in the last week. We've got governments failing because of increasing food prices of 6 to 10%, and yet we've got the Federal Reserve targeting a 5% rate of inflation in the U.S. for the next 2 years because they think that'll be good and that will reflate financial assets, which means it's going to reflate the banks. 5% is what they target, and 6% is what are bringing down countries. I don't understand that.
Well, you shouldn't understand it because everything the Federal Reserve has done is wrong. Go back over the videotape, as they say. Listen to Bernanke in 2005 saying that there's never been a nationwide decline in housing prices. How about this one, Benny boy? Where are we down? 27% since the peak in 2006 at Depression-era levels? Hey, Benny, how about the 1 million people that were foreclosed on last year and the 1.2 million they're expecting this year, Benny? Yep. Who could get away with this stuff? The only people who could get away with it is bullets, bombs, and banks, Harvard, Princeton, Yale. One loser after another.
All right, brother, look into the second half of 2011. Tell me what you're seeing. But you don't have to give away all your trade secrets now. Just give me a picture of what the U.S. looks like.
Well, we're going to go into it. We're into a depression. You look at these unemployment numbers. John Williams, the shadow stats. Look at his numbers. They're not the whitewash numbers by the White House. And we're look at the. I just saw a study, Dan, that showed that we will not regain the jobs we lost in this depression at the rate of job creation now until 2030.
Yep, I know. And by the way, John's a regular guest with us, and I'm holding his latest shadow government statistics in my hand right now. And I love the way, folks, you can go out to his website, and he will help you debunk the rhetoric coming out of the Bureau of Labor Statistics and the Federal Reserve. It's a great publication. Use that for your research. Go out and take a look at Gerald's site, Trends Research. You will get a much different perspective on the economy. You may not be as I don't want to use the word negative because you and I take a lot of guff for being negative. But the problem is when the events occur, then they all of a sudden they go back and say, "Oh, Gerald really had that right."
You know what it's like, Dan? The Titanic's going down, and you have some jerk saying, strike up the band. Let's be positive.
We're Americans, right? We can overcome anything. You know what the bad part, Gerald, is? We are Americans. We can overcome anything, but we can only overcome it when we have financial and political leadership that will say we're in a real problem, but we have to band together and fix this, and we can fix it. Except we've got idiots right now that are saying, oh, don't worry, Americans risen before, overcome things before. We'll do it again because we're Americans. Hey, buddy, how about a plan? How about getting us all together to go on the same path?
You know who these people that are saying this? Remember the guys you knew in high school and college and the girls that wanted to be the head of the class, class president, the head of the student union?
Yep.
And they were the brown noses and the suck-ups, and they were the glad-handers and the insincere, and you wondered what they had between their shoulders because it wasn't a head that could think. All it was a head that could scheme. Well, here they are, folks. They followed their career path. Call them your presidents, senators, congressmen, and legislators. The brown-noses, suck-ups, and glad-hands that never had a bright idea in their lives. That's all they are. They're called politicians. And they don't have the solutions. They didn't before, and they don't then. They don't now. I love this whole thing about the midterm elections. Remember that hype?
Oh, yeah.
How they were going to be so historic? Yeah, it's like the incompetents getting together with the inepts, the Bananos and the Gambinos. That's the Republicans and the Democrats. So anyone looking toward your leader for leadership, you're in trouble. And if you don't believe me, and I'm a political atheist, and you know me, under the Bush administration, I was ripping them apart for TARP.
Yes,
and that other guy, what's his name, Henry Paulson, the former CEO of the Goldman Sachs gang, that was our Treasury Secretary, that gave our money to his company, $13 billion to bail out their bad bets.
One of the biggest crooks we've had in that office in a long time.
Well, look who Obama just brought in as his chief of staff.
Yep.
Bill Daley. From that wonderful Daley family in Illinois.
Mm-hmm.
You want to talk about a political mafia.
Hey,
and where did he come from?
Hey, Gerald, hold on 1 second, brother. I got about 1 minute left, and I want to use 30 seconds of it. I want you to tell our listeners what they should be doing over the course of the next year to prepare for what you're seeing coming.
I'll tell you what I do. I'm still heavily invested in gold and have been since 2001 when we call the bottom at 275. I have my cash spread between Swiss francs and Canadian dollars. Because one goes up, the other goes down. To me, the Swiss and the money cockroaches of the world, they're not going anywhere. I have food. I have enough for 3 weeks' supply. and I believe in Fourth Amendment rights, Second Amendment rights. So I'm armed and ready.
Well, Gerald, I tell you, brother, it's always great to have you on. I want to have you back as soon as we can. These are tough times for everybody, and the people at least need to have the opposite side of the positive story told, so they can at least have something to compare. Gerald Celente, we can't tell you how much we love having you on. Website is trendsjournal.com. Gerald, Happy New Year to you, brother, and we'll have you back real quick.
Okay, thanks a lot.
All right, we're going to be right back after this break. We're down to 2 seconds. Don't go anywhere.
Troublesome road.